The BBC is facing a leadership crisis after its Director General Tim Davie and News Chief Deborah Turness resigned over the editing of a speech by US President Donald Trump. The public broadcaster has faced a storm of criticism for misleading editing of a speech Trump made on January 6, 2021, before a crowd of his supporters stormed the Capitol in Washington.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
So the BBC just imploded. Yeah, like the actual BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the people who've been around for 100 years, telling everyone else how journalism should work. They just lost their top 2 bosses in the span of like 48 hours, and it's all because of Donald Trump. Again, come on, can you believe this? We're in November 2025, and Trump is still causing international incidents from the Oval Office, but this time is different. Because what the BBC did, what they actually did to his speech, yeah, we need to talk about that. Because whether you love Trump or hate Trump, and I know where most of you fall on that spectrum, what happened here is wild. Here's what went down. The BBC put out this documentary, Panorama. It's their big investigative series. Very serious, very prestigious. And they decided to do a piece about January 6th, you know, the Capitol riot from 2021. Still a massive story. Still dividing the country. Still being litigated in courts and in Congress, and apparently now in the media too. So the BBC takes Trump's speech from that day, the one he gave before everything went sideways, and they edit it, but not like trimming it for time. They splice it, they cut sections together, they make it look like Trump is directly calling for violence, like explicitly, and then they air it to millions of people in the UK and around the world. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Lisa Nandy said removing the BBC board member, former Conservative aide Robbie Gibb, who's been accused of driving the criticism of BBC editorial mistakes, would not be legal. And she ducked this Labour MP's question.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Robbie Gibb, faithful or traitor?
Secretary of State. Perhaps the honourable lady and I can hear her views about that over a few drinks later on.
Lisa Nandy said the long-planned process of deciding the BBC's future would start within weeks.
And then someone noticed, because of course someone noticed. This is 2025. Everything gets fact-checked within minutes. Someone pulled up the original speech, compared it to what the BBC showed, and yeah, it didn't match at all. The BBC had basically created a new speech, Frankenstein style, taking pieces from here and there and stitching them together into something Trump never actually said. Now look, I'm not here to defend everything Trump says. That's not my job. But journalism has rules. You don't just rearrange someone's words to make them say something they didn't say. That's not editing. That's fabrication. And the BBC knew it, because within days, the head of news resigned. Deborah Turness, gone. Then the Director General, Tim Davie, the top guy at the entire BBC, also gone. November 9th, 2025, 2 of the most powerful people in British media just walked away. And Trump? Oh, Trump is having a field day. His lawyers sent a letter, a big one, demanding a retraction, demanding an apology, and threatening, get this, threatening a $1 billion lawsuit. That's billion with a B, against the BBC, for defamation, for making him look like he was inciting violence, when his actual words, according to the full transcript, didn't do that. And then Trump goes on social media, because of course he does, and he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, BBC journalists are corrupt and dishonest, which, yeah, that's Trump. But here's the thing, this time he might actually have a point, because the BBC chair, the person in charge of the whole organization, came out and apologized publicly said the editing gave the impression of a direct call for violent action. Their words, not mine, not Trump's lawyers. The BBC admitted it. So now we've got this international scandal. The BBC is in crisis mode. British media is tearing itself apart, trying to figure out how this happened. American media is having a field day because it's Trump. And Congress is losing its mind because guess what else is happening right now? Democrats and Republicans actually working together. Yeah, you heard that right. Bipartisan cooperation in 2025 to demand Trump's resignation. 8 Democratic senators just broke ranks. They voted with Republicans to end a government shutdown. And other Democrats are furious. They're calling it a betrayal. They're saying these senators sold out. But those 8 senators, they're saying Trump's behavior, including this BBC lawsuit threat, including everything else he's been doing, is proof that he needs to go. And some Republicans, not a lot, but some, are actually agreeing with them. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. Because we're watching real-time political realignment over what? Over a documentary edit? Over a lawsuit threat? Over January 6th again? All of it. All of it at once. And it's November 2025. We're barely 10 months into Trump's second term. And the system is already fracturing. And here's what nobody's talking about yet. This isn't just about one documentary. This isn't just about one lawsuit. This is about trust, or the complete lack of it. Because when a news organization as prestigious as the BBC, when they get caught doing something like this, it confirms every conspiracy theory out there. Every person who ever said the media lies just got validated. Every person who ever said you can't trust what you see on TV just got proven right. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. Because we need a functioning media. We need institutions we can trust. We need some shared reality where facts actually matter. But what happens when the facts themselves become weaponized? What happens when even video evidence can't be trusted because everyone's editing it to fit their narrative? That's where we are now. That's the world we're living in. And the BBC scandal is just the beginning. Because if they did this, if the BBC, the gold standard of journalism, if they manipulated footage this blatantly, what else is being manipulated? What else are we not seeing? What else has been edited, spliced, rearranged to tell a story that isn't real? So yeah, buckle up. Because what I'm about to show you, what really happened here, is bigger than just Trump versus the BBC. Way bigger. This is about the collapse of trust in every institution we used to rely on. And once that trust is gone, once people stop believing anything they're told, there's no getting it back. All right, let's actually dig into this. Because the surface story, the headlines, they don't tell you everything. And most people are missing the bigger picture here. First, let's talk about what the BBC actually did, because the details matter. The documentary was called Panorama. It aired in early November 2025. The episode focused on January 6th and Trump's role in what happened that day. Standard stuff for a documentary about American politics, right? Except they didn't just show clips. They edited Trump's speech, and not in a small way. They took segments from different parts of the speech, different timestamps, different contexts, and they put them together to create this narrative that Trump was directly telling people to storm the Capitol, to use force, to fight physically. And look, Trump did say fight like hell in that speech. He did. That's documented. That's real. But the full context of that speech, when you watch the whole thing, he also told people to march peacefully and patriotically. Those words are in there too. But the BBC cut around that part. They removed it. And then they rearranged other sections to make it look like a continuous call for violence. And when people started pointing this out, when the fact checkers got involved, the BBC couldn't deny it because the evidence was right there. Side-by-side comparisons, the original versus their version, and they didn't match. So Deborah Turness resigned first. She was the chief executive of BBC News, been there for years, very respected in the industry, and she just walked away, said the editing fell short of our editorial standards, which is like, yeah, that's putting it mildly. Then Tim Davie followed. He's been Director General since 2020, survived multiple controversies, but this one was too big. He couldn't weather it. And now the BBC is scrambling. They've issued multiple apologies. They've promised internal reviews. They've pledged to restore trust. But the damage is done because this isn't just about one documentary. This is about credibility. The BBC's whole brand, their entire reputation, is built on being trustworthy, being accurate, being fair. And they just proved they're willing to manipulate footage to push a narrative. Whether that narrative is true or not, that's almost beside the point now. They lied. They got caught. And people noticed. Now Trump's response, because of course, Trump has a response. His legal team sent a letter on November 11th. very formal, very detailed. It accuses the BBC of false and defamatory statements. It demands a full retraction, a public apology, and it threatens that $1 billion lawsuit if they don't comply. $1 billion. That's not a random number. That's designed to get attention. That's designed to make headlines, and it worked. Trump also went on Truth Social because he's always on Truth Social, and he called BBC journalists corrupt and dishonest. And yeah, that's inflammatory. That's Trump being Trump. But here's the thing. When the BBC themselves admit the editing was misleading, when their own chair says it gave the wrong impression, Trump's accusation starts to look less like a rant and more like, well, a fact. And this is where it gets complicated. Because Trump has spent years attacking the media, calling them fake news, calling them enemies of the people. And most of the time, those attacks are exaggerated. They're political theater. But this time the media actually did something wrong, probably wrong. And Trump gets to point at it and say, see, I told you. And millions of people who already distrust the media, they're going to believe him because the evidence is right there. So now we've got this feedback loop. The BBC messed up. Trump is capitalizing on it. His supporters are energized. His opponents are scrambling to figure out how to respond. And meanwhile, Congress is falling apart because while all this BBC drama is unfolding, there's also a government shutdown happening. Or there was a government shutdown. It just ended. But the way it ended, yeah, that's the other part of this story. 8 Democratic senators voted with Republicans to pass a funding bill and reopen the government. 8, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in the Senate, where every vote counts, 8 Democrats breaking ranks is huge. And these weren't random backbenchers. These were senators from swing states, senators who are up for re-election soon, senators who are looking at polling data and seeing that their voters, their actual constituents, are tired of the gridlock, tired of the shutdowns, tired of the constant fighting. So they voted yes. They worked with Republicans, and they got the government open again. But the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, they are furious. They're calling these 8 senators traitors, sellouts, corporate shills, because the bill they voted for, it didn't include everything progressives wanted. It didn't have climate provisions. It didn't have expanded health care. It was a clean funding bill, just keep the lights on. And for progressives, that's not good enough. And then these 8 senators and a bunch of other Democrats start talking about Trump. They start saying publicly that Trump's behavior is destabilizing, that his lawsuit threats against the BBC are attacks on press freedom, that his pardons of people involved in January 6th, yeah, he's been doing that too, are proof he's unfit for office, and they're calling for his resignation, not impeachment, resignation, just step down, leave office, let the VP take over. And here's the kicker. Some Republicans are agreeing with them. Not a lot, maybe a handful, but any Republican calling for Trump's resignation is significant because Trump still controls the Republican Party. His endorsement can make or break careers. So for any Republican to go against him publicly, that takes guts or desperation or both. So now you've got this weird coalition forming. Progressive Democrats who hate Trump, moderate Democrats who are tired of the chaos, and a few Republicans who think Trump is too much of a liability. All of them saying the same thing. Trump needs to go. But here's the problem. Trump isn't going anywhere. He won the election in 2024. Legitimately, by the rules. He's got a mandate. He's got support. And he's got no intention of resigning just because some senators and a British broadcaster are mad at him. So this coalition, this temporary alliance, it's not going to accomplish anything. At least not right now. But it does show something. It shows fractures. Deep fractures in both parties, in the media, in public trust. And those fractures, they're only getting wider. And let's talk about timing for a second. Because the timing here is suspicious. The BBC documentary airs. People notice the editing problems almost immediately. The backlash builds. The executives resign. And all of this happens in the same week that Congress is dealing with the shutdown crisis. The same week that Democrats are fracturing over how to deal with Trump. The same week that calls for Trump's resignation are getting louder. Is that coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe this is all connected. Maybe the BBC documentary was supposed to add fuel to the anti-Trump fire. Maybe it was supposed to give Congress more ammunition for calling him unfit. But then it backfired. Spectacularly. Because instead of damaging Trump, it damaged the BBC. It damaged the media's credibility. And it actually made Trump look like the victim. And Trump is smart enough to exploit that. He's already framing this as proof that there's a global conspiracy against him, that the media, British and American, are coordinating to take him down, that they're so desperate to get rid of him that they're willing to fabricate evidence And his supporters, they're buying it, hook, line, and sinker. Because here's the thing about Trump supporters, they've been told for years that the media lies, that you can't trust what you see on the news, that everything is biased against Trump. And most of the time, that's hyperbole. Most of the time, the media is trying to be accurate. But every once in a while, something like this happens. The BBC gets caught red-handed manipulating footage, and suddenly all those conspiracy theories don't seem so crazy anymore. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's figure out what this all actually means, because there's a lot happening here, and it's easy to get lost in the noise. Point 1, the media is in crisis. Not just the BBC, all of it, American media, British media, global media. People don't trust it anymore. And stories like this, stories where a major outlet gets caught manipulating footage, they make it worse, way worse. Because now, every time a news organization criticizes Trump, or criticizes anyone really, people are going to ask, but did they edit it? Are we seeing the full story? And that skepticism, that's poison for journalism. The BBC used to be the gold standard. You could point to them and say that's how it's done. That's what good journalism looks like. But not anymore. Now they're just another outlet that got caught pushing a narrative. And the fact that they apologized, the fact that they admitted wrongdoing, that almost makes it worse. Because it means they knew what they were doing. And they did it anyway. And Trump is going to use this forever. Every time someone in the media criticizes him, he's going to bring up the BBC. He's going to say, remember when they edited my speech? Remember when they had to resign? That's what fake news looks like. And his supporters, they're going to eat it up because it confirms everything they already believed. But here's what's really scary. It's not just Trump supporters who are losing faith in the media. It's everyone. Moderates, independents, even some liberals are starting to question what they're being told. Because if the BBC can do this, if they can manipulate footage this brazenly, what else is being manipulated? What other stories have been shaped to fit a narrative rather than just reporting the facts? And there's no easy answer to that. There's no way to rebuild that trust quickly. It takes years, decades to build credibility. And it takes one scandal to destroy it. The BBC just learned that the hard way. Point 2, the political situation is unstable. Like really unstable. We're seeing Democrats split, moderates versus progressives. And it's not just about policy, it's about strategy. The moderates, they want to work with Republicans. They want to get things done. They want to show voters that government can function. But the progressives, they see that as surrender. They see it as giving up, and they're not willing to do it. And Trump is sitting in the middle of all this chaos, just watching it happen. Because as long as Democrats are fighting each other, they're not fighting him. As long as the opposition is divided, he's safe, and he knows it. That's why he's being so aggressive with the BBC lawsuit. That's why he's pardoning January 6 participants. He's testing boundaries, seeing how far he can push. And so far, nobody's been able to stop him. The 8 Democratic senators who broke ranks, they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought ending the shutdown would win them points with voters. But instead, they just made their own party mad. And Trump didn't give them credit for it either. He just kept attacking them. So now they're stuck. Hated by progressives, ignored by Republicans. And Trump is still in office. Some Republicans are speaking out. That's new. That's significant. But it's not enough. Because most Republicans are still loyal to Trump. They're still scared of him. They know if they cross him, if they call for his resignation or vote against him, he'll endorse someone else in their next primary, and they'll lose. So they stay quiet. They let the moderates and the Democrats do the fighting. And Trump survives. And the calls for resignation? They're meaningless without action. You can call for someone to resign all you want, but if there's no mechanism to force it, if there's no impeachment, if there's no real consequence, then it's just noise. It's just politicians making speeches for their constituents. And Trump knows that. He's not worried about some senators calling for him to step down. He's worried about losing power. And right now, he's not losing power. Point 3. This is about more than Trump. This is about trust. Trust in institutions. Trust in media. Trust in government. Trust in each other. And all of that trust is breaking down because people don't believe what they're told anymore. They don't believe the news. They don't believe politicians. They barely believe their own neighbors. And when you lose trust at that level, when the social fabric starts tearing, bad things happen. The BBC scandal is a symptom. It's not the disease. The disease is this environment where truth doesn't matter as much as narrative, where facts are flexible, where everyone is trying to spin everything to fit their agenda, and both sides do it, left and right, conservative and liberal. Everyone's guilty. Everyone's complicit. And Trump is a master at exploiting this. He's been doing it for years. He calls everything fake news. He attacks the media constantly. And when they actually mess up, When they give him ammunition, he uses it ruthlessly. That's what's happening now. The BBC handed him a gift, a perfect example of media bias and manipulation, and he's going to ride that story for months, maybe years. But it's not just Trump. Other politicians are learning from him. They're learning that you can attack the media and get away with it, that you can dismiss inconvenient facts as fake news, that you can create your own reality and your supporters will believe it. And that's terrifying, because once we lose the ability to agree on basic facts, once everyone retreats into their own information bubbles, democracy stops working. Point 4. What happens next? That's the real question, because this story isn't over. The BBC is still dealing with fallout. They're going to have internal investigations. They're going to have leadership changes. They're going to try to rebuild their reputation, but it's going to take time. And in the meantime, people are going to remember. They're going to remember that the BBC lied, that they got caught, that they had to apologize. Trump's lawsuit, that's going to drag on. These things always do. It'll be in the courts for months. Maybe it gets settled. Maybe it goes to trial. Either way, Trump keeps it in the news. He keeps talking about it. He keeps using it as proof that the media is against him. And his base, they love it. They love seeing him fight back. They love seeing the media get exposed. The political situation in Congress, that's not getting better anytime soon. Democrats are divided. Republicans are mostly unified behind Trump, but with cracks starting to show, and the 2026 midterms are coming up. So everyone's positioning, everyone's trying to figure out how to survive, and that means more chaos, more infighting, more dysfunction, and the calls for Trump's resignation, they're not going to work. Trump's not resigning. He's made that clear. He thinks he's doing a great job. He thinks the media and his opponents are the problem, not him. So he's staying. And unless something major happens, unless there's some kind of political earthquake, he's going to finish his term. But the damage is done. The trust is broken. The divisions are deeper. And the next crisis, the next scandal, it's already brewing, because that's how this works now. We lurch from crisis to crisis, from scandal to scandal, and nobody has any idea how to stop it. The BBC situation shows us something important. It shows us that even the most trusted institutions can fall, that even the most respected journalists can make catastrophic mistakes. And when they do, when they get caught, it doesn't just damage them, it damages everyone. It damages trust in all media, all institutions, all authority figures. And in a world where people already don't trust anything, where conspiracy theories spread faster than facts, where everyone's looking for reasons to dismiss information they don't like, this is gasoline on the fire. This is proof, actual proof, that sometimes the conspiracy theories are right, that sometimes the media really does manipulate the truth, that sometimes you really can't trust what you're seeing. So yeah, the BBC imploded. Trump threatened $1 billion lawsuit. Democrats and Republicans are fighting each other as much as they're fighting Trump. And the whole system is shaking. And we're only in November 2025. We've got more than 3 years left of this. 3 more years of Trump. 3 more years of chaos. 3 more years of institutions crumbling and trust evaporating and everyone screaming at each other. Can you believe this? This is where we are. This is American politics in 2025. And honestly, I don't know if it gets better from here. I really don't. But hey, at least it's never boring, right? At least we've always got something to talk about. Always got another scandal, another lawsuit, another resignation, another crisis that makes the last one look tame by comparison. And I'll be here, breaking it all down, making sense of the madness, or trying to, anyway, because someone's got to do it. Someone's got to wade through all the spin and the lies and the manipulation and try to figure out what's actually happening. So stick around, because trust me, this story's just getting started. The BBC scandal is just the opening act. Wait till you see what comes next.